Okay, hello, you guys, and welcome to another episode of Conscious Body Conversations. I am your host, Jessie Lucas of Embodied Movement Training, and we are here today for a part two, which we don't often do in this series, but this conversation absolutely warranted a part two. So I have back returning today, Karen Bayard of Whole Body Laughter. And if you did not watch our part one, which was, if you're watching kind of in real time a couple of weeks ago, we were talking about accessing joy in hard times. And we were talking a bit about kind of the more macro things, like where does our joy sit when there are so many kind of broad, kind of overwhelming, hard things going on, whether it's hard things going on around the planet, hard things going on in your life, hard things going on in your body. And one of the things that I love about Karen's work is she brings it into that body space with the work she does in Whole Body Laughter. But like all of us, it's been hard times. So where we left that conversation was, okay, well, now we can kind of place our access to joy, or the importance of accessing joy in hard times, but what do we actually do about it? Because that doing part can be really hard. Like, even when you can see it, even when you know it's important, you still kind of end up wanting to crawl in bed and, put your head under the covers and, choose your favorite coping mechanism. So Karen, welcome back. Thank you so much for giving us another chunk of your time. I know you are traveling across the country these days. I know you are working your own work. I know you're doing some kind of restructuring. And I really appreciate your voice in this conversation. So bring us, connect the dots from where we were in our last conversation and what are we going to do today?
So first of all, thank you, Jessie, for having me again. I'm really happy to be here and very excited about talking about the practical aspects of joy in all times, but specifically now in this time where many people feel overwhelmed and even those that are not necessarily feeling overwhelmed, these are tools that you can use even if you feel like you're doing all right. They're still helpful. So one of the things you mentioned about kind of just wanting to get into bed and draw the covers over your head, I am an advocate for that too. I think that it's important to note in general for everybody, but also specifically for this work, that whole body laughter and the idea of joyfulness and play and vibrant living isn't about discarding or not giving value and time and credence to all our feelings, the anger, the chaos, the confusion, the frustration, the despair, all of that is real and needs a place, it needs a voice. So if what would serve you in a moment is to just be like, I need to press pause. Right now, pauses is my best ally. So whether that looks like quieting everything down, turning off your phone or putting on an airport mode or whatever, and putting your feet up and just sitting in a room and staring at your plants and being like, I'm going to breathe for a few minutes, or it's you were getting out of bed and you're going to get out. You're like, I'm not ready to face the world yet. Give yourself a little grace and say, all right, the world is probably not going to fall apart if I give myself 2, 3, 4, 5 minutes to just be here and lie here and rest, to breathe, to, if you pray or you meditate or you visualize, whatever it is that you do, just be still. And then when you're ready, just go, okay, it's time, let's go. I think that's important. I have an exercise that I used to do in physical presence, as opposed to like the virtual version of the life that we're living now, where I had invited adults to do temper tantrums. And they were like, what? This is like, I can't do this. It's easier to do in a group when other people are doing it than to be in your house and feel like you're the only one doing something that feels really out of place, And so the idea that you get to like scream and you get to rage and you get to like release all of that like pent up fury that is inappropriate for us to have. No, we're not going to do that. This is not the right place. It's not the right time. Everybody's going through something. Just manage yours. That's garbage. You're feeling it. Let it through. Let it through. Let it move through you so that what wants to show up, which is balance, which is calm, which is joy, can have a place too. I feel like if you stop one thing, the other things get stopped too. So I love the idea of having some practical tools today to share with everybody, that are takeaways. And I encourage everybody to, as you're listening, and Jessie and I are going to try some of these on. She's being brave to just let me be like, here's what we're doing. And some of it will be a surprise to her. Hopefully it will all be a wonderful surprise. Let yourself trust that what you resonate with is meant for you. And if something that I offer or that suggest is you're just like, yeah, I'm not doing that, that's okay. Pick and choose what works for you. Modify it if it feels almost okay, but you'd rather do it a slightly different way. Do that. The whole idea is just to explore what feeling good feels like in your body, and to give that space to breathe and be and expand as much as possible. I'm going to give a couple of examples of places in life where what we're doing will match how it sort of makes sense in a way that people might understand better. Music was one way. So if you're listening to any song, it doesn't matter what genre of song, there are rests in every song. There is no song that I've ever heard of or that I know of that is constant beat, 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 beat. And even if when I'm doing that, in between the pauses when I'm saying beat, 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 there's a breath that I'm taking. If something was constantly pounding, it would become unnerving. There are actually tactics of using that in torture because constant repetitive sounds are unnerving to the mind and body, right? Likewise, when we're only receiving stressful, traumatic news or information, that your body's kind of like constantly under assault. And which is why many of us feel like, my gosh, like what next? Like everything is breaking all that, oh my God, and it just kind of amps up this sense. When what we need is to mix in a sense of, okay, this is what's happening. But in between these spaces, what are we putting there? Is it sleep? Is it good food? Is it movement? Is it laughter? Is it good times with your family, reading a book, hugging someone, just being with a friend, having a conversation? Like we can go on and on with all the things you can put in there to balance that sense of chaos that many of us are experiencing. The second example is nature. We often are like, oh, look, fall is my favorite season. It's my favorite season anyway. I love the leaves. And then of course they fall in the winter. And we enjoy the snow for what that is. And then the buds and the flowers and the things come up in spring. And we're like, hooray. And we enjoy that cycle. But when that cycle happens in our life, sometimes we forget that it is a cycle, that things are going to break, things are going to fall away, things are going to die, things are going to be reborn, things are going to bloom, things are going to blossom, and then it will continue again. So we attach ourselves to the loss and think, oh my, I can't do this. But the loss makes way for the rebirth. The loss makes way for the new thing. So how do we embody these realities that we know and in many cases appreciate in our own physical selves? So when I say whole body laughter, it's the idea that we are marrying our physical selves with the whole wide world and universe around us. That all the things are parts of a thing that all move together to make the world do what it does, right? So with that, let's start with the first practice, which
can I just highlight a point that you made there, because I think it's worth noting so that there is greater receptivity when we go into whatever you are surprising me with next. And I gotta say, I'm a little anxious because I don't do fun and joy very well, and I have family home and they don't know what's going on in here. But that what you're saying about that constant beat, 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 whether we are in kind of a compressed, acute, stressful situation or a kind of chronic, ongoing stressful situation, what you just said right there, a few statements back, really hit home. Because when I look back at I lived probably a good decade in not a low grade chronic stress, but a heightened chronic stress. And it felt exactly like that. It felt exactly like beat, 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 beat. I couldn't find those spaces in between the beats. And so when I got advice like, give yourself 5 minutes just to be quiet,
Mhm.
I wanted to scream because I
Mhm.
said, well, I can do that. I'm a yoga teacher. I'm trained in meditation. I have a meditation practice. Like I could do that. And you know what? As soon as I snapped back out, that beep, 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 beep,
Mhm.
beep was still there. That torture. Wow. The fact that you just
Mhm.
pointed out that is literally a torture technique,
Yes.
and it felt very, invalidating just to get this advice, like take a pause, take a day to yourself, take a, that kind of thing. Because one, I knew every moment I paused, my
Hmm.
problem, if I
Mhm.
closed my eyes, my problem was actually getting worse
Worse.
while my
Mhm.
while my eyes were closed. This was my situation. It's not every stressful situation. Some things, yes, if you unplug, the world will not fall apart, and
Mhm.
things will be there. But some things, the problems do perpetuate when you close your eyes or when you pull
Right.
back. So I had that dichotomy,
Mhm.
and the fact that pause didn't actually produce relief. So what I loved about your example of the
Mhm.
temper tantrum, and what I'm
Mhm.
excited to kind of hear, is that I am an advocate of rest and pause and all of that as well. And thankfully, I have found a way to where those things are actually productive right now. And I hope everybody listening either is in a place where you have found productive rest, productive pause,
Mhm.
or you keep going until you do. And I will tell you, it is worth it. Productive
Yeah.
rest and pause is so worth, recalibrating until you can
Mhm.
figure it out. But when you said, in groups you would do adult temper tantrums,
Mhm.
my goodness, I think my 5 minutes would have been so much better used having a temper tantrum
Right.
than pause. And so what I'm really wanting to highlight here is that the kind of self-assessment, or if you need
Mhm.
some support in that assessment of okay, stress is in my body. Biochemically, as mammals, we all have these pre-programmed stress responses, right?
Mhm.
You have this chemical cocktail of cortisol, adrenaline, all of these things, these nervous system programmings that happen to, ready your muscles, to divert blood flow over here, put it over here, all of these things that just happen. So if I'm in chronic stress and I just quiet and pause, and I haven't trained my nervous system to regulate to calm in
Mhm.
that pause, then all I'm doing is kind of swimming in that soup
Yeah.
of stress. What I
Mhm.
love about the temper tantrum is it's like switching the flow of, like, here's some chemical, biochemicals, here's some hormones to help process that stress that
Mhm.
you're saturating. And here are
Mhm.
some things that some commands to utilize the commands that are going on, like readying
Mhm.
your muscles. If you have a temper tantrum and you're flailing,
Yeah.
you're using those muscles that
Right.
stress has told you to use. So
Right.
you're actually in a small way or in a massive way, actually meeting the needs that stress has commanded you on the inside to do. And
Mhm.
so sometimes it's probably about aligning with those commands, like having a temper
Right.
tantrum. And my guess is sometimes it's kind of like overriding those commands, like, oh,
Mhm.
here's some laughter, here's
Yeah.
here's some something else.
Mhm.
But I just wanted to highlight that, because if you are or have been like me and you've been told, take a few minutes to be quiet, and you end up feeling worse and your problems got bigger while you were quiet,
Mhm.
that's a real thing.
Yes, it
And
is.
it can be some work to find productive rest and pause.
Right.
And the temper tantrum alone is such a great
Right. Tool.
technique
Mhm. Mhm.
tool to have in your toolbox. And so maybe we can learn some others as well. But I wanted to
Yeah.
highlight that, because I know it can feel so frustrating, and I didn't want anybody to push stop right here of like, oh, Karen's just going to do these placating
Right.
things and that's
This.
not helpful. Like,
Yeah.
we don't know what is going to hit where.
Right.
And, whether it's on the side of calm or joy or temper
Right.
tantrum or something else,
Right.
but hang with us.
Yeah. So let me say this, because the idea is feel all the feelings, because you can't really fully experience joy if you're stifling other things. So that is never really gonna work on its own. Like that you can, I guess you can brush your teeth with just a dry toothbrush and it'll do something. But it's probably better if you have whether it's toothpaste, some kind of homemade, some you put on your teeth. Like it needs a support, you know? That's probably not my best example, but the idea behind it is it's not just about like traveling one avenue. It's a blend of things, you know? And there are many examples of that too. People talk about eating the rainbow. Like you can eat healthy, but if you only eat bananas all day, you're probably eventually gonna have a problem, yes. Right? So the idea, so first of all, let's just put out there that people can do an adult or whatever age temper tantrum. And ideally, I think most of us know what that looks like. You're lying on the floor because I feel like it's probably safer to just be down there. And you can beat the floor with your hands and feet and kick, and you can scream, you can say stuff if you want. I find that it's actually more helpful to make noises or scream rather than speak it through. But if someone feels like speaking it through is helpful, that, I mean, obviously go with that. I find that when I speak it through, it just kind of recycles why I'm mad, yeah. As opposed to just letting the feeling of being angry or frustrated out, right? And so there's that. That's if you're in a place where you can physically do that, you know, you're not going to frighten everybody else and have people come running and sort of interrupt that process, do that. Many of us have had the experience where in your car and you're like screaming and like shaking or beating the steering wheel because you're someplace and you're just like, what the, rah, you know, you can definitely do that. That can be a version that you can do, providing that you're not driving. You know what I mean? I mean, let's put the safety measures in place. Pull over if you have to, find a field or a place where a supermarket parking lot, you know, and park far away from everybody else who's like walking down with their cars, like, what is wrong with that? Like, you know what I mean? Like let's not frighten the world with your stuff. And then also like there's a version with the pillow, you can do that in your house. I don't like that version because it feels like it's stifling the thing I'm trying to free. But if that works or that's all you've got, do it. I love the idea of like physically beating, breaking stuff, but I do not like to clean up after. So like having a pillow and beating your bed with the pillow is a possibility. The worst that's going to happen is the bed will be disheveled and to remake the bed. We can do that. So there are places, and I don't know how this is working in the pandemic, but where you can go and like break glass and they put you in full gear and where you're protected and or there's like walls or, you know, barriers and things so the glass doesn't like flash back and like cut you up. The home version would be if you have either very durable Rubbermaid trash can, big Rubbermaid trash can, or a metal trash can would be better. And you just take glasses and you take the lid, cover it. So as you throw the glass or whatever in there and it breaks, you're using the lid to shield yourself and turn yourself away, maybe wear goggles, this kind of stuff, long sleeve covered up clothing. Something about the idea or the feeling and the sound of hearing things crack and break, something about that makes a lot of people feel better. It's just that we've taught ourselves to say, oh, now you've made a mess of things and now you have to clean it up. Like we put all these things around it that make it difficult to do that and express that. But there is something soothing on some level for some people by doing that. And if you can take any of those options on in a safe way, like don't have your kids standing nearby watching, that's crazy. Like when something goes shattering, you don't know where it's gonna go. If you need to lay plastic down first so it's easier to clean up, like just figure all of that out so that like a day later you're not stepping on shards of glass and being like, well, that was just you know? Definitely feel like there's a place for the releasing of all of that, what I call like the shaken can of soda. You know, when you shake a can of soda, like in the joke, you like hand it to somebody, they open it, it's like, and you're like, and you're all thinking it's funny and the person really like doesn't like you in that moment. We get like that, all like effervescence is beautiful until it's pent up and then it's not. Then it's just messy, right? Mm-hmm. And chaotic. And we get that way when we don't let something out. We don't give it a place. We don't let it be what it wants to be in that moment. So I feel like that is definitely, let's just say tool, like a cluster of tool number 1A, B, 1C, 1D, 1E, the whole like let that feeling have a place. Okay. And the same as with crying. If you need to cry, cry your eyes out. Like just cry. If you're able, some people want to cry and they can't, so they'll have to find something else they can utilize, you know, since they can't easily access that emotion. Another thing, and I like this next thing is a joyful thing. And I call it the joyful album. It is also, I also sometimes call it the one minute of joy, because you can do it in a minute. So this is one that I'll have you and I try out. And so ideally what you're gonna do is, I think this works well sitting down. You can do it standing, you can do it lying down, but if I'm lying down, people fall asleep and then you're like, oh, it's 40 minutes later and your 1 minute of joy, you don't even know what happened. So, but maybe your body needed a nap and that's okay too. But in this exercise, ideally you'll close your eyes when the time comes to start, and you're gonna envision right here at the third eye level, you know how we joke about like the carrot dangling in front of you and you can never reach it? It's sort of that, but without the frustration of the carrot. So this idea that you're visualizing like a mini movie, like right here in front of your third eye. And the mini movie is little snippets of things that you've loved about your life or someone or something. It could be a dog, it could be a trip, it could be whatever. It could be how you're, you know, that one rose is actually coming out when none of the other roses bloom this year, whatever it is. So what you do is you sit, and I'll use the example of my mom making soup. My mom makes a lot of things really well, and I love soup, and I don't know if I love soup because of her, but she'd make this like ginormous, like restaurant deep pot full of soup. And she'd be cooking it for a little while, and then when it was done, she would take the jumbo spoon and like tap it pretty hard on the side of the pot. And it became the way we knew the soup was done. So we would come running like, the food's ready, you know? And then when you coming around the corner to the kitchen, you see her in there like going like this with the spoon and some other kitchen tool she'd pick up, and she'd shake them like maracas. And we're like, she's dancing over the food. What is this about? And we would all just laugh, and then she'd make us put us a bowl of soup, and we would go and eat it. And I remembered when my brother died, and also when my father passed away, you start to think of those things that you'll never see again in real time, right? And I thought, I wonder what about my mom I will miss. And this is one of the things that I think about. Like, I remember her doing this, and I love that moment in our life, that little snapshot. So in this exercise, as you sit and you close your eyes and you rest, I will see that little movie. Now, it may have taken me like 2.5 minutes to explain it, but as I'm just seeing it, it'll take probably like 15 seconds. I'll envision her, there's a soup, there's a clap, clap, clap of the spoon, there's us running around the corner, there's her dancing with the maracas, and then us eating the bowl of soup and thinking, I love that lady. As soon as that happens, I giggle. And as if you're flipping the page of a photo album, you move to the next thing. It might be something with my dog and how she'd be like every time a fire truck or engine drove by when I lived in DC. And I was like, why did she do that? And, you know, and I loved the sound of her doing that once I realized it wasn't actually like hurting her ears. So that might be one of the ones I do. And then I giggle. And again, like flipping the page, you see the next one. And you do that, you set a timer for a minute. And when the timer goes off, you finish whatever one you were doing. And then that's it. You just sit and be still for a moment. And then you get up and you go about your day. And it's a minute. So you want to try that with me?
Absolutely.
Okay. This is the giggling part. Just know it doesn't matter if you fake it, and we can talk about that in a minute. Because people are like, but why am I giggling? That's weird. Like, how do I do that? Just even if you're like, just, and if it's really hard for you to do that, especially by yourself, just smile. Try to genuinely smile, just because ideally you're thinking of something that would make you smile. So that part shouldn't be particularly hard, but just try it on. Okay. So we'll go ahead. I'll set the timer, and then we'll go. Okay.
Okay.
So close your eyes and relax, and then just start when you're ready. Okay, so if you're on one, you can finish your last one for those of you that were trying that with us. So essentially that is it. How do you feel? And you don't have to say some miraculous thing. You might be like, nothing. That's fine.
Well, I can tell. I mean, it feels good, even just that, like little like cheek popping thing that happens when you have like some condensed time of smiling. Like that feels
Right.
really nice all by itself.
The thing about it is, I think when I'm in a moment of frenzy, like emotional frenzy, this is not helpful for me. This is not, I don't think that this is for that moment. Imagine a child when something happens and like, and then they did, and then this happened, and they can barely breathe. Like, you're not doing this exercise then. So if that's how you feel, this is not for that. This is the exercise that you do daily, like that moment in bed, or if all you've got is when you're in the shower or on the toilet doing number 2, you know what I mean? Like we all have a minute somewhere, and snatch it for yourself and do it. And so this practice, I feel like, is the kind of thing that helps over a long period of time. It's something that you do on a regular basis that helps balance the deep highs and deep lows, right? The temper tantrum is something that you do when you're like, I don't know what to do next. Like, I can't do one more thing. Like, I'm done. But you're not done because there's still more to do. But you feel like you cannot continue. You know what I mean? That is when you need to like take off the valve and let the steam blow. And then when you're kind of in that, like, and again, I'm going to keep using kids as an example because they're a great example. Like a kid cries and cries and cries and cries. This may have happened to us as adults too. You cry so much that you've made yourself tired. Yeah. And maybe you sleep well after, or there's a moment of calm, even though the chaos still exists, but you've sort of tuckered yourself out, letting it out. And that's not a bad thing, So you want to allow a place for that. So this exercise, again, daily practice, however often daily is, that might be like 3 times a week because that's what you remember. That's fine.
What I loved about that, Karen, is, well, first of all, thank you for putting that in context, because kind of trying to force yourself into that, if what you really need is kind of like wring out the sponge with a temper tantrum and a cry. What I loved about that is that it felt sensory. Like, I know we were only kind of using like visualization, but it felt, but by adding that, kinesthetic, like smile or the auditory giggle to it, there was a sensory component. And I know, from the physical work that I do, when you have that kind of sensory component, it gives you that feedback through your nervous system for your brain to register, and you're creating new neural grooves. Like here's me kind of unpacking it like I nerdy do with everything. But I liked that because of that sensory component that I know it is laying down new tracks. And that's why I wanted to have this part 2 conversation with you, is like the practical part of what can we do besides just a placating, like, oh, just pause and it'll all be okay. But this, what you just said is accessible. Like you said, you can do it in the shower. You don't need any special equipment. You can, it doesn't take a long time. And it reminds me of some of Peter Levine's somatic experiencing work. There's a practice that I know really helped shift me out of a dark spot once I kind of got that frenetic energy taken care of. It's called orienting to pleasure. And it was literally just, kind of noticing like, like the way another crazy thing, a huge rainstorm just dumped on us as soon as you said, close your eyes. But like the way that like the rain, I can hear it hitting the deck out there. Like that's a, like that intensity, that's pleasure, and then you hang with that for a few seconds, and then you turn to something else, like, oh, but the way that the light is coming through that window, or, like things that you can act like this, you took memories, situations that you actually have experienced, whereas that's more kind of like, okay, I really like that color blue, let me linger on that for a minute. But just, I know that taking that in lays down new tracks. Just like if you come onto the yoga mat every single day, you might not feel like it, but eventually you're going to be able to
building something in your system.
You're building a muscle. You're building muscle.
And there's a couple of a couple of things too is one of the beautiful things about laughter yoga, which is kind of, the first iteration of what I learned and then, morphed and built my own thing into whole body laughter. But the idea that your body doesn't know the difference between a real laugh and a fake laugh. So a laugh generated because I asked you to laugh, like, versus like, oh my gosh, you're so funny, or this movie is so funny, and I'm laughing because it's been inspired by humor, right? All of the things that happen in your body when you're laughing are the same, whether you're pretending or it's real. And I want to invite, and sometimes when I tell people that, they're like, yeah, okay, but understand this, when you breathe daily, it's kind of like inhaling and exhaling is kind of like accordion effect. However, like if you're exercising or if you're a singer, you don't have to be a professional singer, but like if you ever sang in a choir and you have phrasing and you've got to get to the end of the phrase with so many words, with so much inflection and being in tune without running out of breath, and laughter are three examples of ways where you exhale to such a great degree that it allows the breath to be far more expansive than it ever is in your day-to-day kind of accordion shallow breathing practice, or not even practice, but just the being of breathing. And so think of a time when you've laughed and laughed, but and you're like, oh my gosh, I'm gonna pee myself, or oh my gosh, my right here feels like sour lemons, or and then at some point in there you're like, like it's almost like this big gasp of air because you're drawing it at a big inhale in to continue the big like that laugh that just feels like somebody like went like this to your back. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. That uses up so much more of the lung capacity than your regular, and that is the fourth thing that would be in that category is like yogic breathing, like lion's breath, or the kind of breaths where you're like how you're really using your body to move that air. Most people, if you're not doing any one of those four things or things that are similar to that, are not using their full respiratory capacity. So laughter, I love as an exercise for breathing that is like, but I'm just laughing. And you're like, yep, but you're breathing deeply. And it helps to reinvigorate the body. So even if you're just doing like, it is not doing what I just described. However, it is kind of talking to your body like, hey, we're about to feel good, or we are feeling good. And that is the messaging and the kind of repatterning that you want mixed into the, oh my gosh, we're gonna die. What's next? How much more can I take? All of that yada, 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 yada that happens constantly, especially now. We need to keep filling in those gaps with, man, I love you. Those flowers smell good. Are you wearing a new perfume? That feeling of surprise when you walk into a room and it smells fragrant and you're just like, that smells so good. It's a nanosecond that it takes you to notice that, but it comes just for a moment. Mm-hmm. Something that is really, really agitating in your system. So there's that. I want to put out there also that there was a period of time, and I don't know if I mentioned this in the first talk. I'm the sole caregiver for my mom, and there was a point last year where like she just like something kept happening, and there kept being a new injury or a new surgery needed or a new thing, and it was back and forth to the hospital, ambulance 911 calls, and and I was just like, at one point, it was early in the morning and we were at the hospital, we were in the emergency room, and they were taking a very long time to get her fully checked in or deciding if they were going to admit her. And I hadn't eaten, I hadn't showered, but it was just like, call 911, we've got to get there. So hours later, I'm in this public place. I don't feel fresh. I haven't eaten. My hair is all like, just whatever, And I'm like, oh my God. And so I just was like, I'm going to take a break. And I went out to the car thinking the walk from the emergency room out the doors, outside, because the sun had risen at this point, would do me some good. But by the time I got to the car, I didn't really feel better. And I just felt unnerved. And I was like, but I didn't want to make a scene. I didn't want to like, whatever. So I sat in the car and I just started bawling. And I was like, I can't do this. I don't think I can do this. Like, how much more is there going to be, And I just wailed. And I was just like, don't try to figure it out. Just be in the feelings. And as I cried and cried and cried and felt angry and felt scared and all of the things that just kept flushing through, at some point I was just sitting there, just staring off into the distance. And what thought that came to my mind is, and I'm not a sports person like that, hardly at all, but I thought of a boxer, and like you're in the ring and you're like doing your thing and maybe you're losing, and you come to the side of the ring and the coach or whatever the person, your trainer is like, you want me to call it? Are you okay? And they're like, no, because you don't want to give up, but you're getting pummeled. And then you go back out and then you get beat up some more, and you're like, and you think you can win and you want to win, but you're not winning. And then maybe they ding the bell or however you end up back in the corner, and you're just, at this point, you don't sit down, you're just like standing there on the ropes. And in that moment, I thought, I don't know that there's ever been a bout ever won from the ropes. Like if you want to win, you have to get back in. No matter how much you're getting beat up, you just got to figure out, what is my best avenue to winning, or at least getting to the end, right? How do I get to the finish line, even if I don't know where the finish line is? What tools do I have to help me stay in this thing? And I guess, honestly, you could say white flag, I can't, I'm not doing this. I guess you can do that. I'm not suggesting people never quote unquote quit. Quitting is not an option. That's not true. Stopping is always an option. I think the quit is only at the very end when there's no more tries after that. I think pausing is not quitting, you know? But it was really it was interesting because after I let everything out, an idea came. So the point is that an idea came. Whether that idea worked well or was the perfect idea is not the point. But sometimes when I need, like, what is the answer here? What do I need to do? It never comes from the place of like, blah, blah, blah. It comes from calm, even if it's a nanosecond of calm. And that calm sometimes only comes, for me anyway, when I let the storm rain down, like you use the example of the torrential rain. I think of a city like Miami where you can be walking around and it's all sunny and great. And all of a sudden it's like, and it's wild and crazy. And I love that kind of rain. And 2 seconds later, it's gone and the sun is out and this road is dry. I'm like, how is the street dry? Like there were streams of water running down the street a few minutes ago. So anyway, the point is, let the rain come down and see what happens on the other side of that. I think that's kind of almost another highlighting, underlining of the temper tantrum thing that really probably is very important. Let me jump, since we're talking about nature, to the next exercise. I call it the I am exercise because it's an idea of marrying yourself to something else that's, you can say it's bigger than you. You can say it's just, I don't know that it's always bigger than you, but it's just not you. And in this exercise, I ask people to see, like, how is it that you feel in this moment or this period of time in your life, and marry it to, and there are a lot of examples of what you can do. So some workshops I've said, a force of nature. What force of nature would you be right now? Sometimes I'll say, pick a color, or I'll say, pick a piece of furniture. You can liken yourself to anything. So if people are trying this on, I encourage you to explore all the different types of things you can be like. And the idea behind this is an opportunity to assess your feelings and where you are. And then by thinking of, let's say, force of nature, let's go with that since we were talking about torrential rain. And I remembered one of the times I did this exercise in the group, and I offered up, I am a midnight blue sky with a bright white streak of lightning. You never have to say why, you just say, I am da 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 da, and then the next person goes in a group setting. And people were like, oh, wow. And I realized that people probably thought something about that seemed electrifying. But the reason I said that day was because I felt really down. I was really struggling with a bout of depression, and I had that class already booked. And I was like, hey, I'm going to this class talking about joy, and I feel like poop. And but I also knew that I wasn't done living my life. You know what I mean? So the bright white streak of lightning for me was hope. But they probably were like, she's so like vivacious and vibrant. That's amazing. She picked the lightning and the blue sky. But meanwhile, I'm like, you know, so you have no idea why people pick what they pick. I like this an opportunity to express the truth of where you are without having to tell the whole story. And like, some people don't want to put their business in the street, or you don't really want any advice You don't even want anybody to be like, oh, I'm so sorry that's happening for you, but you want to let it out. So this is a great way to express that. And likewise, if it's a joyful thing, maybe you're not ready to tell somebody you just found out you're pregnant, but you want to be like, maybe I can't want to tell people, but I don't want to tell people, you know? So in this exercise, what I'm going to ask us to do is to check in with ourselves, see where we are in this moment and how we feel, how we're calm, frenetic, wishy-washy, changing, whatever it is that you feel, and then think of something in nature that seems to match what that is. And then when we're ready, then all you'll say is, I am, da 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 da, and that's it. I'll go, you'll go, I'll go. We'll just take a turn each. So let me, now that I've been talking, you might have thought of yours. Give me a second to think of mine. Okay, I have mine. Do you have yours?
I do. Yep.
Okay. Would you like to go first?
Sure. Okay. I am a strong rolling ocean.
Okay, thank you. I am, I don't know what you call it, but that moment where like a waterfall hits the water and it kind of splashes back up like this. That's how I feel. So I like this exercise. So when I'm giving these exercises, it's important, I feel, to say when it might be best used. And again, use it how you want. This is the you for everybody listening. I like this exercise as a group exercise, and the group could be like you and your partner, you and your child, you and your parent, you know, or it could be like your family, or it could be your friends. It could be the way you learn to say hello to people. How are you doing today? And you're like, I am, da 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 da. If you were food, how are you feeling today? Or who are you, or how are you today? It gives you a chance, as I said, to express a lot without giving any personal information if you're not ready to do that. This could also be a talking point in a family setting where people get to say how they feel, and you decided as a group beforehand if you're going to talk about why they said what they said. I think that might be a safe space to do that. And so it might be a conversation starter. It might just be a way to release something without having any other kind of attachments or things to it. I like this for that. And again, not in the moment of chaos. This is an ongoing tool to use. I don't know that you have to do it daily. I think that it just is, use it when you feel like you can. And again, force of nature, what game are you, food, piece of furniture, city, what article of clothing, time of day I wrote, a tool, what car, what part of the body, color, a pattern. Like, you can do it with anything. One of the things I like about it, it allows you also to appreciate the importance and the value. Like if we're doing furniture, things in the house, and someone says doorknob, and you're like, doorknob. But it makes you start to think, or like a hinge on the door, something you never think about, but a door doesn't work if there's no hinge. And then so you realize that I am part of a mechanism that's much larger than me. I work in service of all the other parts in the world that are working also alongside me. So I am no more insignificant or more significant than anything else around, above, next to me, right? And I think something about that is humbling, but it's also empowering. Like, I am this thing. And if you would pick up the force of nature and you do this exercise tonight or tomorrow, you might see something completely different. So it also allows you to recognize that we are ever changing, and that there doesn't need to be an attachment to me being some version of a waterfall in this moment and some streak of lightning in another moment. Like, I am different things, and all of them are pretty great and pretty powerful, and that I am not lost or insignificant or non-essential, because people don't think about screws and hinges. But trust, if you take every screw and hinge out of your house is not quite, it's not standing, that's for sure. So they are important. And I think it's important for us to feel important when it feels like things are too out of control. You mentioned something.
Yeah, I just want to point out, thank you again for noting this may not be appropriate at all times or at a particular time. I know one of the unfortunate mechanisms of stress, as whether you've had a powerful, acute stressful impact or that chronic ongoing stress, is the imagination functions in your brain can get shut down.
Yep.
Because you're in, survival mode, and imagining is not necessarily a primary survival mechanism. So I know there have been times in my life where I've attempted exercises like this and I'm like, I got nothing. I
Yep.
can't, it just like that function is just not there. It's just not accessible, not that. So, you know, if that is you, if you kind of followed with us and you went like blank slate, it just may be that those mechanisms need to be turned back on. There might be some kind of more primal
Right.
care that is required to get those switches flipped on. But what I liked about what you did in giving the different categories, like forces of nature, pieces of furniture, those kinds of things, is it gave the potential that if imagination is kind of at least dampened by stress, for something to spark, for something to catch. Like if you didn't necessarily connect with a force of nature, but like the fact of thinking like, what furniture would I be was humorous to you. And that might have sparked like that humor, like sparked you into that curiosity where you might be able to actually inquire. I appreciate that you gave us that this isn't a kind of one categorical thing, but you know, you could put in it any amount of categories. It gave a kind of more of an open door to that creativity to find yourself.
But also that, and also the furniture thing is good when you feel like I can't think of something. What? Because you can look around the room and go, laptop, book, and the book's not a piece of furniture, but something in your house, windows, shutters, these lights that are hanging around the window. Like in that case, you don't have to be creative. You don't have to draw on a place that's empty. You look around you, and this is an example of what you said in that exercise where you pick things you can see. Because when you're in the moment of like you don't, like you need a touch point, but you don't even know how to create that. But if you see it in front of you, providing you that you have vision, you know, it's right there. A sticker, a table, my water bottle, this mouse. You know what I mean? Like mouse, computer mouse, not like mouse, right? Like there's a mouse. That's a whole other thing. So there's that. The two things I'm gonna say as we come to, like, I know that I'm watching the time saying, oh, we're running out of time. Two things. I brought this time because I mentioned it last time. It's a simple, like, brown craft. Well, you can't see the brown part because I old school, like, covered it with paper, like how we used to cover our books. I sat one day, it probably took me a few days, and I made myself a bunch of lists in here. I made a list of all the things I've accomplished in my life. I made a list of the things I think I'm good at. And I asked people also, like, what do you think? Like, if you had to describe me, or if it was my funeral, what would you say about me? And I wrote it down. So this book is the book I go to when I feel like I don't know why I'm here, and I don't know what I'm doing. Don't ask me to draw on some place that has nothing. So sometimes I'll sit and I'll just read, and sometimes I'll read it and I'll cry because I'm like, I did do that. I did make it through that. And it reminds me. And even in that moment, if I'm not like, it's not like, if for people, and again, dating myself, but remember when Papa used to drink the spinach and he'd be like, blah, 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 and his muscles would like, bam, boom, and he's all ready. Like that doesn't always happen when I read this book, but it is kind of a reminder, like, you've got this, Karen. You're going to get through this. You've done this before. Somewhere in you, you know how to move through things. You move through them on your own sometimes. Sometimes you call on help. Sometimes you, and I also wrote, like, what did you do to get out of those things? You've got it. Like, if there's a moment ever, and I did this when I was in a better place. So like in a moment like this where it might be hard, you want to ask people, what do you think I'm awesome at? They might be able to tell you. Write it down, even if you're like, I'm not good at that. Nobody asked you, write it down. You asked them because you didn't know, so write it down. And if it takes you a year to make this book, you'll keep it for your lifetime. You only need there to be something in there. So I love this book as an option for people to make, so that when you forget yourself, you can read yourself. And if you've built good friendships and relationships with people, your loved ones should be able to help you remember what you're about, and that you are stronger than you think you are in this moment, you know, and that you're gonna, and then a lot of people can't assure people that we're gonna be okay, because we all are like, I don't know, you know, but we can at least kind of anchor each other for a little bit. for a little bit. The last thing I'll put out is the Unstoppable song, which is the thing I mentioned to you that I don't know how we'll do it together. But the Unstoppable song is, if you think of any sporting event where they're like, all right, and on the field is number 44, and they're like, cue the music, and they're like, then they come running out, and they're like, ah, I love that guy, or I love that gal. And or also in comedy shows they do it. They'll be like, and coming to the stage, we've got Jimmy Crack Corn, and he comes out, and or she comes out, and they play the song, and you're just like, and you're in the audience, like, yeah. And I'm like, man, imagine I was going to work, and I was getting out of the car, walking into the building, like the universe like cued my song, and I was just like, you can't stop me from nothing today, boy. So the Unstoppable song is a song that you listen to when you're like, you can't say poop to me. I've got this covered. It's also the song you listen to when you're like, I don't have nothing left. And it's a song you hear in a movie where they play the song, you're like, he's gonna make it. She's gonna be all right. Because they're getting their butt handed to them and they play the song, and you know from the sound of the music that something's about to change. And you're like, this is about to get good. And that, if we're using the boxing analogy, it's when they stand up and start walking back to the center and the music changes and you're like, that guy's going down, right? That is your Unstoppable song. Everybody has at least one. And by the time you start thinking about it, you're going to realize you have a bunch. I encourage everybody to make a playlist if you are fortunate enough to have some way on a phone or whatever to make a playlist. If you don't have that, write the lyrics down to one of them. Maybe put that in your book, the whole lyrics to one of your songs. So if you don't have anything in here about yourself, you just read the lyrics to that song where you're like, yeah, I'm gonna do this, I can do this. Because it is your hype man when you have no hype man. It is your cheerleader when you don't have that. It is there's that flame inside you that's flickering and you think it's about to go out. And this song, when you play it, turn it up as loud as you possibly can if that's comfortable for you. Dance your butt off. I don't care if you think you can't dance. Something about moving your body is helpful. We talk about like having a temper tantrum. If you're like, okay, the angry thing makes me scared, then dance. And I don't care if all you can do is just be like, I mean, that has never helped me, the little sway thing. I've got to be like, because something about it feels like I'm shaking off this thing that I can't get off my back. And that helps me. But whatever pace, whatever groove works for you, do it and let that be the thing. And generally songs are somewhere between 2.5 to like 5.5 minutes. Steal that time away somewhere in the day. And again, like none of these things are meant to be single-handedly the thing that will like miraculously change your life. It is used in conjunction with trying to eat well, taking a shower every day, all the things that we're doing that kind of help us go, collectively, the things that I'm doing, it will make me feel like I'm going to get through this day, this time. So these are offerings to use in conjunction with whatever else you are doing, or as a starting off point if you feel like you've got nothing. And I hope that it helps us get through, because at the end of the day, most of us, and I'm imagining if you're listening to this, watching this, you want to be here. You want to know how we're going to get through this time and any other time. So if you want to be here, anything you can try or do, if it works, use it. If it doesn't, go to the next thing. We will be okay. And it might take time. And we need each other. And we need every tool in our arsenal at any given point to use at different times to make everything some version of good and right again, you know? So I hope that some of this helps. I hope that some of this helps.
I can tell you my heart feels like it is more full of joy now than when we started this conversation. And what I love about these tools, especially that last one, when I kind of think of, joy versus stress or hard times, those are different kind of vibes, right? We're kind of low vibe when we're stressed or depressed, or, things are really hard. And joy is kind of like a higher vibe. So like that last one with the playlist, with the music, you're borrowing a vibration, you're borrowing an influence of, of joy to infuse. And the teeny tiny little story I want to wrap with here. I immediately started thinking of a couple of songs, but just a few weeks ago. So my sweetie side hustles as a DJ, and she was DJing a Sweet 16 party. It was so awesome. It was a gorgeous like rooftop place. It was so awesome, and it was so cute because we asked it was two birthday girls that were turning 16. What do you want us to play? And they said, can you play some old stuff? And meanwhile, us old ladies, we were like, what do you mean old stuff?
Old stuff.
Because, like early 2000s. Like, oh, how cute. Anyway, so we're playing like lots of different kinds of music. And who is it? I Came to Fly came on. Oh my God, I gotta look this up.
No, I'm thinking I have to look it up too. What song is that?
Is it Rihanna or something? Yeah, Rihanna. I Came to Fly. Okay. Rihanna came on, and I was like, oh yeah, this is, I feel like, and I was in a place like I was really busy that day, like a lot of things on my mind, and what, and kind of like, my mood. I mean, this was such a fun, beautiful party, but like behind the scenes in my own world, things were starting to feel a little clustered and cramped, and that song came on, and it was like, I got this. Like, I came to fly. I came to win. I came to fly. And all right, so a couple of things I want to ask anybody who is watching. So we had a temper tantrum, we had the 1 minute album, we had I Am, we had was there one before the music?
That one I said that wasn't on the list.
Oh, the book of lists.
The making the book. Yes.
Making the book and then music. So if you did the I Am, and you want to just a place to put whatever your force of nature was, no need for explanation, wherever you're watching this, share that. We will witness that with you.
Yes.
That would be awesome. And then the other action step I'm going to take is I'm going to make I Got This playlist, and I Came to Fly by Rihanna is going to be the first song on there. And I'm going to think of a few other songs. So whether it's like Spotify or wherever you are, or if you just want to type out a list of songs, I would love to share that, because just like we kind of need to borrow vibes from some, from the music, from where, from the album, from the lists that we've made, we can borrow vibes from each other, right?
We can.
And so sometimes I might not have thought of something, like Karen, you posted something the other day, a song you were listening to, Bill Withers' Grandma's Hands. And I'm like, ooh, I haven't listened to that song in a long time. And I had this kind of flood of memory. So I borrowed from your Instagram post the other day, right? So I think it would be super fun if we shared some song recommendations or playlists, so we can all help each other out, because that's really why I want to be having these conversations, so that we know we are all in this together. And something that we thought, I don't have a grip on this, maybe one of these practices, or holding on to it with each other, or sharing a resource, or reaching out, or just being witnessed, can be that next thread that kind of gets us to that next moment. So it's not this general, oh, it's all going to be okay, but like, oh, it is, because I just felt something there. I felt a shift, and I can take the next step. I can go to the next thing. Whatever that is. So anybody who wants to participate in those things would be awesome. Karen, you are freaking amazing. I am so grateful for our connection, and for the tools, the resources, the time that you have shared with us today. I know you shared with us last time. I will include it, but any final takeaways you want to share, and then make sure you remind us where we can find you.
So you can find me at wholebodylaughter.com. I'm on Instagram as Whole Body Laughter, and also on Facebook and Twitter. I would say Instagram is the place I use the most. I'm also on Spotify as Whole Body Laughter, and there are what I call a collection of unstoppable songs. So every time I do a workshop, I ask people for their unstoppable song, and every time I do a workshop, the songs played in the workshop are somebody's unstoppable songs from this list that I've been collecting since like 2010. The list on Spotify is only like whatever I've put on. I change it from time to time, but there are probably like thousands in the larger playlist. So I invite people, if they want to check that out while they get inspired about what their song is, and share that with you here, so that we can, I'd love to hear what people's songs are. And I promise you, I'll be adding it to the list. So yeah, that's it. Just whole body laughter, pretty much everywhere. That's where you find me. And I would love to witness anybody's I am. Yeah, any questions, anything, email me through my website, DM me on any of those platforms. Happy to have conversations about any of this. Yeah. So
Awesome.
yeah.
Thank you.
Thank
Karen,
you for
thank you
having
so
me.
much. Yay! I
Thank
feel
you.
like maybe there's another something coming down the line. We'll see. You'll see us together again, I am sure. Everybody, thank you so much for not only watching, but hopefully participating with us. We appreciate it. Thank you so much. Take care. Have a great day.